Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Boardmen Don't Get Paid podcast. We are here today to discuss Week 3 NFL DFS as well as our gambling walk for the week. I'm joined today by my co-hosts, Lawrence
What's up, everybody?
and Yash.
What's up?
So, before we get into it, can we just briefly talk about how terrible Thursday Night Football has been? Leonard Fournette today had 14 carries, and I think the first 12 he rushed for negative 11 yards.
He was going backwards the whole time for sure.
He could have just fell forward and did better. Like, we had more rushing yards than Leonard Fournette in the
through like three quarters, right? Yeah.
Yeah. All three of the Thursday night games thus far have been extremely underwhelming. Hopefully that can change, but it's...
I mean, I feel like that's kind of the same way with the Monday night games too.
I don't know. I mean, the first Monday night was pretty good, I thought. As a Raider, obviously I'm going to say.
Oh, yeah, that one.
But the Deshaun Watson, Drew Brees, matchup, I thought that was pretty entertaining. That might have been the game of the year so far.
Was that Monday night?
Yeah.
Okay, never mind then. Monday night, great. Good stuff on Monday nights.
Also, last Denver, Chicago. I mean, that was fun. Like, that ended in a fun way.
That was a Monday night.
That wasn't Monday night.
No, that was Sunday night. Never mind. I got my days mixed up right now.
Wasn't Sunday night either. Was it?
That was Sunday afternoon.
The Sunday afternoon. Never mind. Ignore me. I was in Chicago, so.
What was the last Monday night game?
Okay, we're getting crazy sidetracked, but yeah. So Thursday night football sucks. But anyway, let's go ahead and start with DFS. We'll pass it first to Mr. Lawrence.
Well, first of all, I just want to say you said we were going to give you gambling locks, but in no way are there locks in gambling. Just going to say that right away. We'll give you our picks, not necessarily locks. The way we're going so far this year, though, could be locks. We're 5-1, right?
Yeah.
But
83%.
We'll give you our picks.
Yeah.
That have been decently successful so far.
Thanks for giving us the politically correct answer.
There you go. We live in a very PC world nowadays, so I got to give you guys the.
That's why we're all three on one right now, unless you're on a Mac.
Anyway, so this is shaping up to be my favorite week so far in DFS. I think we finally have decently efficient salaries. Not like last week where you basically just played 3 Raiders in cash games because their salaries are so cheap. Mm-hmm. I think this week some thinking is actually involved. And so at least for cash games, we're here to help you do some thinking for you. Sound good?
Sounds good to me.
All right. So in cash games this week, at least from the running back position, I think you have to choose at least 3 of these 4 players that I'm about to name. CMC, Zeke, Austin Eckler, and Dalvin Cook. I think 3 of the 4 are mandatory in cash games. And if you don't play 3 of those 4, I think you're burning money. What do you think about that, Drew?
I think you can get away with 2 out of the 4. I don't think you necessarily need 3. I'm assuming if you did 3, you would be...
You'd flex the other one.
Yeah, you'd be paying super down at other positions, right? Because all 3, like Eckler, Zeke, and CMC are what, almost...
Yeah, exactly. They're kind of expensive, but I think the way that this slate is shaping up, you can definitely pay down at other positions, right? Like you see the wide receivers, like Nelson Aguilar, I think is a must-have in cash. You just plug him in and worry about other places. He's only 3.6K on Draftkings, and he's basically he's top 2 target share for Carson Wentz.
Yeah, so those Eagles receivers are priced.
So at least Aguilar for sure, I think you play in cash games. And then there's another really low-priced wide receiver that I think you can play in cash games too. He's leading the league in red zone targets. And also I think he might also be leading the league in targets per game, which is Emmanuel Sanders coming back from that Achilles injury. He's only 4,800 in a... What's up?
I actually don't agree with that because I think I know he's been getting that, but I'm worried about Jair Alexander. I think he's like a a top. He's one of the top corners in the league, and I think he's going to be drawing that assignment for the whole game. So I don't know. I don't know if I would go there personally. I like his price, but
That's fair. Like his price is so cheap for the amount of targets. He's leading the league in targets, and he's 4,800. I'm
yeah,
saying you could play Emmanuel Sanders.
yeah,
I think they're going to be in positive game script for him
right.
the whole game. They're playing at Packers as how many point dogs are they?
They're
They're
going to be throwing the ball for sure.
yeah, they're going to be what 7.5 point dogs.
Yeah,
So and it seems like he's Joe Flacco's favorite target so far this year.
yeah. I mean,
So
I see what
we'll
you're saying. You're
see.
saying that there's
I
been
for
receivers there.
for cash games, I care more about opportunity than anything else.
Yeah,
And I like his target share, and he's bargain bin. I mean, JJ Arcega-Whiteside's only 3,500 too, and he's going to be getting playing time. So I'm just like, there's a lot of really cheap wide receivers that you can fit those three high-priced running backs. And there's like Larry Fitz and Christian Kirk, who are both still severely underpriced, I think.
yeah.
5.1K, 5K.
I think Fitz is a pretty safe option, personally.
Yeah, so there's a lot of cheap wide receivers you can go to pay off running backs. I think for the most part, people will be doing that this week. I don't know if there's any. I think there's two high-priced wide receivers that you can kind of get away with in cash games, and I think Julio Jones and Keenan Allen are in good spots that
Yeah.
you can roster them if you want in cash games. I don't think they're going to be super highly owned, but I'm not going to knock you for rostering either of them in cash games.
I think Keenan Allen will be highly owned personally, just because like recency bias and like he is getting like pretty much every pass that a receiver's getting from Phillip Rivers, so I feel like he is going to be highly owned.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I think that's a safe play for sure.
Yeah, and coming to cash game tight ends, I think there's a couple of them that are definitely in play. Like Ertz is going to garner all that target share with all the Eagles injuries, and he's only 5,700.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Andrews is still cheap enough. He's been the highest scoring tight end so far this year, and you can play him in cash at only 46. Travis Kelce is always going to be a cash game play. You can play him against whoever you want. He's matchup proof. And then old man Greg Olsen is in a wonderful pace up spot for the Panthers against Arizona at only 3,700. I think those four are definitely cash game viable. Really just depends on how you want to construct your roster because they have four very different prices. So it's one of those you construct your roster, then plug in whichever tight end fits into your roster at the end. What do you think?
That makes sense to me. I think that I mean I agree with what you're saying as far as like you can pay down with wide receivers and other positions. I personally would like to get one of those higher priced wide receivers though. I think I would personally roster Keenan Allen.
I think if you roster a high-priced wide receiver, you definitely try and go for Keenan Allen. It's just hard to find another running back do you want to really pay down on is my thing. I guess there's like cheap enough running backs, but nothing that I'm like very comfortable with in a cash game setting.
What's like a sure thing in your opinion?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
unless you have a sure thing running back at a cheap price that would allow us to afford a high-priced wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, if for me, if Devin Singletary is not playing, like I feel like you can pay down for Frank Gore in cash, personally.
I think you can. It's not fun rostering Frank Gore, but I think you definitely can probably do that. I won't knock you if you pay down for Frank Gore in cash. Yeah.
I think that's one like pay down candidate that I think sticks out to me as far as like he's gonna have his share of the carries. Yeah. Obviously, yeah, his passing game involvement is nothing to, be happy for. But
I personally I was reading some things about them wanting TJ Yeldon to basically split the carries 50-50. So I don't know.
By that they mean TJ Yeldon will be on the field for third down. I think that's what they actually mean. Frank Gore getting the bulk of, if anything's been in like the goal line or 1st and 10.
Yeah.
In the red zone, it's been Frank Gore pretty much.
So I won't fault you guys if you want to spend down to Frank Gore for cash games to allow you to pay up for Allen or Julio.
Yeah, and then tight end, I would probably take. I feel like I didn't even. I think you were asking me about tight end, and I talked about right receiver. But I would take Greg Olsen. I think that looks like a pretty safe option.
He seems pretty safe, right? And he won't have Cam throwing at him anymore, which should probably be an upgrade the way Cam's been playing this year.
Throwing quarterback.
There you go.
But what about quarterback for you and defense?
Yeah, quarterback. I think honestly, like quarterback every week, it's really not a spot you really prioritize in cash games. I think, just because I think this year especially the pricing seems so different. Like I feel like in years past, quarterback pricing has been more condensed, but I feel like it's been a lot more spread out this year. Like you have Mahomes all the way up at 7,600. Which you can definitely play as a cash game quarterback. I'm never going to fault anybody for wanting to play Mahomes or Kelsey as cash game plays because their floor is so high.
Right.
It's just whether or not their price will match the production that you can get from other quarterbacks.
Right.
I think Lamar Jackson at 7K is still in a good spot, in a pace-up spot against Kansas City where he'll probably be forced to throw the ball. Maybe a fade for me. I don't really know, just because this is going to be a real challenge for him. I think he's had cupcake matchups so far.
Yeah. It'll be an interesting game for sure.
I think Kyler Murray's cheap enough. You can play him in cash games at only 5,800. Dak and Josh Allen are still very cheap. Dak playing against Miami. I don't know if I'll go there in cash, but I wouldn't fault you if you want to play Dak. I wouldn't fault you if you want to play Josh Allen at only 5,900. Any of those like second string QBs, I think like Daniel Jones or Kyle Allen, if you want to go super bargain bin, you can play either of those guys.
Yeah, there's a lot of options for sure.
And then the last cash game play that I don't really want to recommend, but I'm probably actually going to look that way, is Jameis Winston again. It just sounds awful wanting to play Jameis Winston.
I couldn't take him in cash.
But versus week 1 where he was the second most expensive QB, now he's like the 10th or 12th highest price QB.
Yeah.
In a cupcake matchup. I think only he's going to be single digit ownership. I think you could totally play him. I think it's a lot better spot than he was in week 1.
Yeah, I mean matchup wise, it looks great. I think he's more of a GPP play in my opinion.
Yeah,
but based on the matchup, I can see what you're saying.
So why would you say Winston and not like Jacoby Brissett, who's 200 cheaper?
Because I've seen Winston's floor and ceiling, and I just think that Winston just has a better floor and a better ceiling than Brissett. Like, I haven't really seen Brissett kind of score the amount of points that Winston's scored. And I've also seen Brissett score some huge duds. When, like, Winston, yeah, he'll dud every once in a while, but he'll still at least get you a touchdown a game. I think it's been how many – I remember reading a stat that he had so many games with, at least one touchdown.
I believe it.
Yeah, I mean,
probably has a kick in all those games too, though.
Yeah, I mean, I can see Brissett. I just think he's more of a GPP play for me if I were to go that direction.
Fair. Do you want to touch on defense, or do you want to move on to GPP?
Yeah, defense. Let's just play the Patriots defense again. Seems like a very solid and safe choice in cash games.
Yeah.
If you really want to pay down, I think I can suggest the Bills. I don't know if I want to pay any more any farther down than maybe 3,300 for defenses. For at least for cash games, I think the Bills, the Vikings, the Cowboys, if you want to pay up, and the Patriots are all solid cash game defenses. But like defenses, it's so highly variable that you don't really need to spend too much time talking. Just choose a defense that you like and fit them in last into your lineup.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm leaning towards cash game plays. Do you have anything else you want to add for cash games?
I think those are all very solid. I think we differ a little bit as far as the
construction
3 out of 4 running backs. I think you can get away with a slightly altered strategy. I think 2 out of 4 is. You can win with that as well.
Who would you be flexing, or what position would you be flexing instead?
I think I would still flex running back, but I would take Frank Gore, and that would give me enough, to pay up for Keenan Allen, who I think is in a really good spot to get a bunch of points.
Yeah, so monitor that Devin Singletary injury because that could come up big.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're listening to this and Devin Singletary ends up playing, I probably wouldn't play Gore at that point. But if he's out, I think at 4,400, Frank Gore is a great cash play.
All right, let's move on to GPPs. We'll start by talking about our favorite GPP quarterbacks. Let's start with you, Yash. Who do you like for your GPPs at quarterback this week?
So my two favorite plays are actually the two most expensive players, and they're actually going head to head. So I really like Mahomes, really like Lamar Jackson. Definitely going to go with one of the two. Haven't decided which. I also like Prescott in this matchup just because he's going up against Miami. So they're probably going to blow Miami out, but you still need to score points. And whenever you're in a blowout, on the good side of it, you're going to have points. So I don't mind playing Prescott in GPP. He's at 6,500. It's not bad. And my last GPP play would probably be Josh Allen. He's 5,900 and he plays like a running back as well. So he got a rushing touchdown last week. I feel like at 5,900, will still be able to bring in good value. And I don't know. He's actually been passing the ball really well for the last two games. So if I were to pay down on quarterback, I would definitely go with Allen. I guess, I mean, I would, I mentioned Brissett. He's not a bad play as well. Going up against Atlanta, that should be a shootout. So I definitely wouldn't fault anyone going for Brissett, especially at 5,200. Yeah, I mean, I think those are basically my QB plays. I'm probably going to be paying up just to one of Mahomes or Jackson, and that's because of that matchup. I think Lamar Jackson has definitely improved he's definitely proven that he can pass the ball, from last year. So, I think you can't go wrong with one of either Mahomes or Jackson.
That's fair. Well, I mean, I thought I asked for one. I guess we just covered all the GPP quarterbacks or a lot of them. So thank you for that. Drew, you have any you want to add for GPPs?
Yeah, so a couple quarterbacks that stand out to me for GPP. The first one, this is kind of a gutsy decision, but I think I'm going to take him in my main GPP this week. I'm going to take Kyle Allen, minimum priced quarterback at 4,000. I don't think it goes any lower than that for QB. The Panthers finally have a guy that can potentially complete an accurate pass. And they're going up against the Cardinals, which is the team that's playing with the highest pace in the league, I believe. And you can expect Kyle Allen to be throwing the ball a lot. And he only needs to get 16 points to hit 4x value, which is pretty simple to do as a quarterback. And even if he doesn't do that, I don't think he's in a spot where he would hurt you. So I feel like it's a worthy risk, and I'm probably going to stack him with either Curtis Samuel or Greg Olsen or both. So that's one quarterback that I'm looking at. Another quarterback that I'm looking at, you touched on it for cash. I think he's actually a better play in GPP, is Jameis Winston. I think he's in a really good spot to potentially bounce back. I would, if you want to differentiate, I think this may be the game where O.J. Howard actually shows up.
He's never showing up this year. You drafted him, you're screwed.
Drafted him, you're screwed.
Wise words. Go trade for somebody while you can.
Yeah. I think this is a potentially good spot to stack Jameis Winston and O.J. Howard, both viewed upon as being, underachieving, rightfully so. But I think against this abysmal pass defense of the Giants, I think they're capable of, far exceeding their price points. And I also like Matthew Stafford against the Eagles. I think that Eagles secondary is porous.
First off, why are we suggesting like literally every quarterback that's playing for GPPs?
Well, I was gonna give three, but those are my three. Matthew Stafford. Yeah, I know, right? We're going down the entire list here. Matthew Stafford, Jameis Winston, and Kyle Allen for me. I think all are in good matchups, all going up against secondaries that have been pretty porous this season, and I think they all have good pass catchers that you can pair with them for stacks. What about you? What quarterbacks are you looking at?
I mean,
Or
you
quarterback?
guys pretty much have named half the quarterbacks playing this week for GPPs.
About a quarter.
Uh,
Yeah.
uh, I mean, what? There's 13 games, 26 teams. I think we've named at least 13 quarterbacks. But
If they're not a cash play, they're definitely a GPP quarterback. Let's just put it that way.
if you guys want a contrarian quarterback, one that's probably only going to be less than 2% owned in a really good matchup, I'm looking at Russell Wilson against the Saints this weekend. Playing at home, slight favorites. Saints are they haven't been that good on defense. They have two very leaky cornerbacks in PJ Williams and Eli Apple. I think you can definitely take advantage of that through the air if you're Russell Wilson, and I think he's going to be super low owned, and he has the potential to be a QB1 this week if he gets enough volume. And as only 4-point favorites, I can definitely see him getting at least enough volume. And the Seahawks have an implied team total of 25 points, which is pretty high for the slate.
And you would be stacking him with Tyler Lockett, I presume?
Yeah, probably either him or DK Metcalf. I really don't know who Lattimore is going to shadow, but we'll see. I think Metcalf's cheap enough. Lockett would probably be the preferred stack.
Mm-hmm.
But Russell Wilson's also a QB that you don't really need to stack him with anybody anyway. So we'll see. But since you guys have named like 12 of them, I'll just take my Russell Wilson and move on.
Fair.
Let's move on to running backs. Who are your GPP running backs? GPP running back for the week.
Well, he can give you two.
Okay, I'll take two GPP running backs for the week from each of you.
Go ahead, Yash.
Marlon Mack is my first one.
If he's healthy, right?
If he's healthy.
Yeah. If he's out, would you want to target Jordan Wilkins or Naheem Hines?
Probably not. I don't like targeting like second string running backs, unless they've already been playing in a committee, like a Rashad Penny. If I'll probably pay up and go Dalvin Cook. Well, Dalvin Cook was my second one. I'll probably stick with like Sony Michel or Aaron Jones. And then Dalvin Cook would be my second.
Explain a little bit about Sony Michel.
Well, the Patriots are going to go up. The spread for this game is like, I don't know, they're favored by 20 or 21, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So chances are they're going to, get up quickly, and then they're just going to run the ball the rest of the time. So you may see 20-25 carries from Michel again. And I think he got a touchdown last time against Miami. So you may see the same thing. He's only at 6,000 too. So
so he did get a touchdown last time, but I don't think he met value even with his touchdown against Miami.
He didn't. But I still may go back to him. I think he's still in a pretty good spot.
Fair.
So yeah, it would be, for me, it would probably be, it'd be Dalvin Cook as my RB, my first RB, and then it depends on if I want to go Aaron Jones or Sony Michel. So it's a swap between those two.
I think that's solid. All right, moving on. Drew, who do you think are some good GPP running backs this week?
I like David Johnson this week. I think he's someone that's not being talked about very much. I think he kind of burned me in my GPP last week where I could have cashed out big, but I think I'm going to go back to that play. I think he's in a good spot. What's the over under on that game, by the way? I haven't checked.
With who? David Johnson?
With what's the over under on that Panthers Cardinals game?
It's at 44.5, which is pretty low, actually.
Pretty low, okay. And I take it Cardinals are favored with
by 2.5. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so I think David Johnson's in a spot where he's going to get a lot of work this week. So I'm going to go back to him this week, and given the ownership that he'll be at, I think it's a good spot for him.
Solid.
And for my second running back, I think you can play Frank Gore in both, honestly.
I don't think he's going to garner much ownership in GPPs either. So I think he's definitely a GPP play as well.
Yeah, and again, that's disclaimer if Devin Singletary is not playing. If Devin Singletary is in, I would not make that play. And the other play that I'm thinking about making, which I'm kind of not as sure about yet, because Chris Carson had some fumbles in the last game, but I think he's in a good spot to get a lot of work this week if they don't penalize him for those fumbles. And I think he's fairly priced at 5,900. I also think his ownership is not going to be very high. And I think you can run on the Saints. I think Gurley played effective last week. And I think Chris Carson's in a good spot. I think the Seahawks will win that game comfortably.
Yeah, I think Chris Carson's in a great spot. I agree with that. You actually took one of my favorite GPP plays this week, and I love David Johnson this week at only 6,800. He's not going to garner much ownership beyond those four that I mentioned in McCaffrey, Elliott, Eckler, and Cook. So David Johnson, I think, could be a great pivot off of Eckler if that's what you're looking for. And Eckler, like, they're playing against Houston, like, it's a pretty solid defense. He's getting the volume. I still think he's a little underpriced, but there's always a chance that they fail, right? There's always a chance Zeke fails. There's always a chance McCaffrey fails.
Right.
So, like, there's merit in fading one of these high-priced guys. So my favorite GPP running back, again, is, I'm going to keep saying this until he's going to get some ownership, and it's going to be Saquon Barkley again. Yeah, he's the most expensive, but this guy has shown that his floor is basically 20 points per game, right? If Tampa Bay is not really, they played well against the Panthers, but I think that was more just the Panthers being bad. Like, they weren't scared of the pass at all. They were just scared of CMC. And I think, I don't know, maybe Danny Dimes kind of opens up the field a little bit for the Giants and gets Saquon some running room. But as a dump down option, like for a rookie quarterback, I think he's going to be very like a safety valve for him. Him and Ingram are going to be safety valves. So I could see a lot of targets and a lot of PPR points for Saquon. And he's going to be low owned again. And under 15% owned, give me Saquon at any time if I can get him at super low owned ownership. Yeah. So I think those are my two GPP plays would be David Johnson, which you already spoke about, and Saquon Barkley.
Fair.
Moving on to wide receiver. Yash, do you have a couple of wide receivers you really like this week? You can name a couple more because obviously we have like 3 spots for wide receivers. Guys joking me with the 1 QB spot, and we talked about 15 QBs.
Yeah, I think Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, is in a great spot. He got, I think people were worried after the first game. He had a monster game against Miami, but he only got 5 targets. But I guess that's all he needed. When he came up against Arizona, he actually got 13 targets from Lamar Jackson. So that was very encouraging. And I think I said in the last episode that basically him and Andrews are going to be the favorite targets going forward for Baltimore. So I think he's in a pretty good spot. He's 5,900 against a KC defense That game's just going to be a shootout, I feel. So I'm definitely banking on that. Second play is Mike Williams from the Chargers. He's only at 4,900, and I feel like that's a really good price for a player that can just go off at any moment. He had a couple. I think he had a game or two. I think he had a couple of games last year where he hauled in like 2 touchdowns or 2 or 3 touchdowns and like 100, 120 yards. So I suspect that this Houston Chargers game is going to be pretty heavily or pretty involved on the offensive side for both teams. So definitely banking on Mike Williams coming out with some scores. I think a lot of the attention is going to go towards Keenan Allen and Eckler, so he may just kind of slip on through. So yeah, and then third pick, got to go with my boy Preston Williams.
Oh my goodness!
At this point, like, I'm not even mad anymore, man. Like,
don't even hate. Yeah, first, like, he was in the guy, the first place guy in the Millie Maker had Preston Williams. I've had Preston Williams the last 2 lineups and I've cashed. I mean, why fix something that's not broken, right? So
death, taxes, and Yush taking Preston Williams.
I mean, but there is something that's broken, right? Instead of Fitzmagic, we're going to Josh Rosen, who was like statistically the worst QB in the league last year.
Yeah, I'll give Rosen some slack for just having god-awful offensive lines and coordinators at that. So we'll see. They're going against Dallas, and obviously Miami's going to be throwing the ball a lot. So who knows? He's still only at 3,700, and if he gets me 12, 14 points, that's perfectly fine with me.
Yeah. Drew, what about you? A couple of wide receiver GPP picks you like this week?
Yeah. So let me clarify, since we named so many quarterbacks. My main quarterback for my large GPP that I'm going to do is going to be Kyle Allen, and I will be stacking him with Curtis Samuel. I think Curtis Samuel's in a really good spot at that price point. I think he's going to get a ton of targets, and I think he finally gets into the end zone and gets the big day that he should have had last week, quite frankly, because Cam Newton overthrew him or missed him completely like 5 or 6 times. So I think he's in for a good game this week. I think the game script in the Raiders-Vikings game will actually involve Kirk Cousins throwing quite a bit in the first half, and I think Stephon Diggs is going to be the beneficiary of that. So I'm going to be going there this week. I think the Raiders, as I know personally, have a poor secondary, and I think Stephon Diggs will be the one to take advantage of that. And I think another guy that's capable of playing, capable of being played in both cash and GPP is Nelson Aguilar, as you touched on. I think he might be kind of this week's Tyrell Williams, where he's so cheap that it's kind of hard to fade him. So I think I will probably be going there at the tight end position. Or sorry, the wide receiver position.
Fair. So my first GPP wide receiver that I really like this week is going to be Mike Evans at only 6,600 against the Giants, who have a terrible defense. He's finally lower price than Chris Godwin. So we made it. Mike Evans, finally cheap enough to play. Finally, the number 2 wide receiver in Tampa Bay, we can finally play Mike Evans. And honestly, like, he's going to have low ownership. No one wants to play him because he's been so bad this year. And I think this is like an ideal matchup for Tampa Bay, right? They're not going to get a defense as bad as the Giants, who've given up 30 points in back-to-back weeks.
They're not. Yeah, he's definitely in a great spot this week.
So if Mike Evans somehow fails me this week, well, I don't know. Maybe we'll blacklist him, but I'm probably going to go with Mike Evans in my GPP lineups. Another guy that nobody's really talking about is, and I know why people aren't really talking about him, but I really like Davante Adams this week against Denver. I know they've been having Chris Harris kind of travel more rather than just stay in the slot.
Yeah, he's been on the outside this year.
Yeah, but it's still Davante Adams, and I think last week kind of proved, nobody was talking about him. He was super low owned and not an easy matchup against Xavier Rhodes in Minnesota, and he ended up becoming probably the best wide receiver at that price for his value. Better than Mike Thomas, better than DeAndre Hopkins. And I think Devontae Adams was at 2% owned. And I think, once again, you could probably get him at incredibly low ownership, and he's basically matchup proof.
I feel like the top of the top wide receivers are a little overpriced on DraftKings still.
I think they are a little bit overpriced, but I think that's how you differentiate yourself. Right?
I agree with that.
If you plug in Devontae Adams, then you're going to build a completely different lineup than everybody else.
Oh, for sure. That's the game theory aspect for sure. But I just feel like Keenan Allen is much more of a, I don't know, guarantee for his production. But I get it from a GPP aspect. Devontae Adams, low ownership. He's basically matchup proof, and if he does go off, then you'll be the only one of the few that hasn't, and you'll reap the benefits of that.
I mean, I think Keenan Allen is playable, but I think Mike Williams is going to get a full complement of snaps finally. And honestly, like watching that game, it looked like Phillip Rivers loved getting the ball to Mike Williams for those big plays.
Yeah.
So there's definitely
likes those.
Yeah, and there's definitely merit, I think, to fading Allen. Like Houston's defense isn't bad. They still have some pretty good players, even though they traded away Jadeveon Clowney.
Yeah.
And then the thing with Houston's offensive line the Chargers' offensive line, it's not good, and Houston still has a very solid pass rush. So we'll see. I don't know where I'm going yet in GPPs. I know I'm probably going to have Mike Evans. I think Devontae Adams is a great GPP play. And then the other play that I want to talk about is James Washington, which I don't know how chalky he's going to be, but I feel like all of the Eagles wide receivers, the cheap Eagles wide receivers, are garnering all the ownership right now. I think James Washington is going to be a great pivot off of them. Him and Mason Rudolph were college teammates. People probably already said that. Dante Moncrief looked like he got benched last week, and James Washington might get a full complement of snaps. So we'll
like the opportunity there.
Exactly, and at only 3,500 in a game where Pittsburgh will probably have to throw it because San Francisco is favored, I don't mind. All he needs to do is give me 4 catches for 40 yards, and I'm already exceeding value for James Washington at 3,500. So it might be my pivot off of Nelson Aguilar in GPPs.
Fair.
Moving on, let's go to tight ends. Any tight ends you like this week, Yash?
Yeah. So I want to go back to last week I played this 2 tight end set. So I want to go back to it. Really like Andrews and I really like Kelsey. Like I said, I feel like that game's going to be a shootout. And Andrews is, I've said this before, and if the last 2 games is any indication, he is one of Lamar Jackson's favorite targets, if not his favorite target. So I think Mark Andrews at 4,600 is definitely a great spot to play him. I feel like he should be a little bit higher priced, but I'll definitely take him at 4,600. And Kelsey is, he's in a great spot too. I think Mahomes is going to be feeding him a lot this week.
Yeah, I like those picks. Drew, what about you?
For tight end this week, let me see. I think for my main play, I'm probably going to play Evan Ingram. I think he's going to, his price is still fairly low. I don't think they've changed it much. I think his target share is going to remain very high, especially until Golden Tate's back. And I think he's in a great spot to 4X. I'm not sure what his ownership will be. I'd imagine it's probably up there, though. So it's not going to be a contrarian pick for me at tight end. If you were to make a contrarian pick, I think, and you were to pick Jameis Winston, I alluded to this earlier. I think O.J. Howard is in a potential bounce back spot, and considering his lack of production the first 2 games, nobody's going to be on him really. So I think that's a spot that you may be able to get some leverage on the field or get differentiation on the field. Sorry, I'm like drunk as far as how tired I am right now. And the other player that I think is compatible with cash or GPP also is Greg Olson. I think he can definitely hit value or far exceed it in both cash and GPP. So that's another player that I'm touting this week.
Solid. I'm just going to give one tight end that I like in GPPs this week, and it kind of is along the same lines of OJ Howard, where people are not going to be on him because he had a really terrible last week, and we had a consensus fade on him last week. But I think TJ Hawkinson is in a great spot this week. After his output last week, he's going to have no ownership. That Philadelphia defense has not been very good against the pass. Week 1, they allowed Vernon Davis to just – like 49-year-old Vernon Davis to just hurdle over everybody for that 79-yard touchdown. And then Austin Hooper didn't have a terrible game against them either. And I think TJ Hawkinson is in play at only 3,500. Probably going to get single-digit ownership on him. So that's my GPP tight end that I like for this week.
Awesome.
Yeah. And defenses. Are there any defenses that you guys – want to tout this week that might get you 37 points like the Patriots gave us last week?
I think you take the Patriots again. I probably won't take the upper tier defenses this week. I'm going to pay down actually and take the Detroit Lions. I think they're in a good spot with all those injuries to the Eagles players. And I believe their ownership will be fairly low. So I'm looking at the Lions, and the other one that I like that I may take a chance on is the Chargers. The offensive line for the Texans, even with Laramie Tunsil, has been pretty bad. And
Laramie Tunsil hasn't looked good, though.
Yeah. They were expecting him to be better than whatever they had at left tackle before. But, yeah. It doesn't seem like it's really done anything for them. But I feel like against Bosa and that pass rush they have over there, that could spell trouble for Deshaun Watson as far as sacks and potential turnovers. So the Chargers are in a good spot too, I think.
Yash, what about you? Defenses you like this week?
I like the Niners. I think they're in a good spot against Pittsburgh. This will be Rudolph's first full game, so there may be an interception or two. San Francisco's defense has been pretty solid the last 2 games, and they did put up a 27 bomb against Tampa Bay week 1. I think there's a chance that they're going to be playing at home. If they can get me 10 to 15, that's fine. I'm not looking for them to just ball out and get me 30, 35. If they do, that's nice. But it seems like they're in a good spot to at least get a few sacks, get an interception or 2, maybe a fumble. So yeah, probably gonna roll with them.
And for me, my GPP defense, I like the Bills. I think I mentioned them as a possible cash play, but I do like them in GPPs. I think what I'm probably going to do in GPPs this week is I'm probably going to fade the Patriots defense, because I think, especially after last week, their ownership is going to be so high, at least for a defensive team. Probably the highest ownership we'll ever see for a defense ever. So I think there's merit in fading such a highly owned, high variable position in the Patriots for GPPs.
But if they go off, we're all screwed.
I'd take my chances on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think...
I don't think there's any way they could repeat what they did last week. Maybe they get a 20.
They could. I don't want to say there's no chance. They totally could, because the Jets aren't good.
They could, but 37 points is...
you did bet me that the Jets are going to win the division this year, right?
I am not going to talk about that.
So I think those are our picks for the week.
Fall within 2 wins of the Patriots. That was a terrible bet.
So I guess that concludes our DFS portion.
Yeah.
Moving on to our gambling portion, just want to give a little overview. We're 5-1 so far for the year after 2 weeks. Hopefully we can continue that trend. What are your favorite picks this week? Or I guess your favorite pick this week. Let's start with Yash.
Can we name like 32 of them, like we did with the quarterback?
Right, just so we get like hedge ourselves. Even if we miss one, we'll get the other side, right?
Let's see. I really like Chargers at -3 against Houston. But I'd never like betting on my own team. It's just something that I don't do. So I think I want to play it safe, and I'm probably going to take the over on the Baltimore-Kansas City game. It's at 52 on OddsShark.
Yep, 52 is what I see on Pinnacle as well. We'll lock in your Baltimore-Kansas City pick.
Sweet.
Drew, what's your pick for the week?
Give me the Detroit Lions +6 at the Eagles.
So if we filmed this podcast earlier, you could have gotten them at 7.5.
Was it really 7.5 earlier?
It's open at 7.5. It got bet down to 7 like after one day, and now it's sitting at 6.
Can we pretend that I took it at 7.5?
We got you down for 6. You good with that?
That's still good. I feel like that's still good.
I think that's a good pick too. I don't know if it's going to be a trap because the Eagles are still the Eagles, right?
They are, and they're at home. But I didn't know it was 7.5.
But that's your persona, right? You take the square picks.
I take the square picks. I'm going to take the Detroit Lions +6, and I'm going to take their defense in GPP.
All right, and my pick for this week, thank you, Yash, for not taking him, is the Chargers at -3.
So we have 2 people on the Chargers, or actually, no, he changed it to the over.
Yes, no, he changed it to the over. A completely different game. So
yeah, I don't bet on my team in whatever matchup they're in.
So yeah, I like the Chargers a lot. I think they're in a good spot after underwhelming last week and going home, which really isn't home field advantage for them, but Southern California is nice. But I think they're in a good spot. I think Houston kind of showed a lot of its flaws last week. They looked really good in game 1, but they didn't look very good at all last week. And I still think the Chargers, are finally in a solid bounce back spot after losing to Detroit. So Chargers -3 for me.
I like that, Lawrence.
Fair. I personally think if I was to bet that game, I would actually bet the Texans. But I guess this is our Cowboys Redskins, or sorry, yeah. Was it Cowboys Redskins last week?
Cowboys Redskins.
Yeah. I guess that's the same thought process. But yeah, I think is anything else you guys want to add, or are you guys?
I think we pretty much touched on everything. We covered about 33 quarterbacks. 28 wide receivers, and I think we're good.
Yeah, take everyone and pick every team. That's our motto here. That's why we don't get paid.
All right.
Well, it was another fun episode. Hopefully week 3 is as successful or more successful than week 2. I think week 2 was extremely,
it was pretty good for all of us.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully we can get a repeat or even better this week. But
good luck to everybody.
Thank you. We will check back in on Tuesday to see how we did and let you guys know.
Peace out.
See you.